morning started like any other at the Ashford penthouse. Carter Morrison scrubbed marble floors while 100 other workers moved like ghosts through hallways that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Then Victoria Ashford walked in. She stopped 3 feet from where he knelt, stared at him with eyes that seemed to recognize something he didn't understand, crossed the distance between them, and pressed her lips to his cheek. The staff froze. Victoria pulled back, smiling at Carter like she had been waiting years for this moment. No one understood what just happened, but everything was about to change. 3 hours earlier, Carter had woken up in a cramped apartment in the Bronx that smelled like instant coffee and yesterday's laundry. His daughter Lily was still asleep in the bedroom they shared, her small body curled under a blanket that had seen too many winters. He stood at the edge of her bed for a moment, watching her breathe. 7 years old. She deserved better than this. He left a note on the kitchen counter next to a box of cereal. The neighbor downstairs would check on her before school. It was the same routine every morning. Carter hated it, but there was no other choice. The debt collectors didn't care about routines. They cared about money. $23,000. Hospital bills from when Sarah died 2 years ago. Cancer didn't care that they had no insurance. Cancer didn't care that Carter worked 3 jobs. Cancer took her anyway, and left him with a daughter and debts that felt like chains around his throat. By 6 in the morning, he was standing in the service entrance of the Ashford estate, pulling on a gray uniform that was 2 sizes too big. The fabric hung loose on his shoulders. He looked like a man who had lost weight too quickly, which he had. Food came second to rent. Rent came second to keeping Lily in a school district that wasn't falling apart. Everything else was negotiable. The Ashford penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that overlooked Manhattan like a crown. Inside, everything was white marble and gold trim. The air smelled like expensive flowers and furniture polish. Carter had been working here for 2 months, mopping floors and hauling trash bags that cost more than his rent. He kept his head down, did the work, didn't ask questions. That was the trick to surviving in a place like this. Invisibility. But Harrison Cole made that impossible. Harrison was the head butler, 62 years old, with silver hair slicked back so tight it looked painted on. He wore a black suit every day and walked through the halls like a general inspecting troops. He didn't like Carter, never had. From the first day, Harrison had looked at him the way someone might look at a stain on expensive carpet. Quiet ones are always hiding something. Harrison had said it once, loud enough for the other staff to hear. Carter didn't respond. He never did. He just nodded and kept working. But Harrison didn't stop. He piled on extra shifts, gave Carter the dirtiest jobs, made him scrub bathrooms that no one even used. The other workers noticed, but said nothing. No one wanted to be on Harrison's bad side. This morning, Carter was assigned to the East Wing. It was a long hallway with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. Sunlight poured in like liquid gold. He dragged a mop bucket across the marble, leaving wet streaks behind him. The penthouse was quiet. Victoria Ashford was still in her private quarters. The rest of the staff moved like shadows, careful not to make noise. Carter had only seen Victoria a handful of times. She was young, 27 maybe, tall and sharp-edged with dark hair that fell past her shoulders. She wore clothes that cost more than his car, but it wasn't the money that made her intimidating. It was the way she looked at people, like they were objects, furniture, something to be moved around or ignored. The staff whispered about her. She fired workers for the smallest mistakes. Burned toast, wrinkled sheets, a glass of water that was too cold. No one lasted long in her service except Harrison. He had been with the family for decades. That gave him power, and he used it. Around 10 in the morning, Harrison found Carter in the hallway. He was carrying a clipboard, which was never a good sign. Carter could feel the weight of what was coming before Harrison even opened his mouth. The older man's footsteps echoed against marble, sharp and deliberate. Carter kept mopping, pretending he didn't notice. Maybe Harrison would walk past. Maybe today would be different. It wasn't. The footsteps stopped 2 feet behind him. Carter straightened up, turned around, met Harrison's cold eyes. The clipboard was pressed against Harrison's chest like armor. His expression was carved from stone. No warmth, no humanity, just the flat certainty of someone who had never been told no. "I need you to cover the night shift tonight." Carter looked up from the mop. The words landed like a fist to his sternum. He had already worked 14 hours yesterday. His back ached. His hands were raw. Lily had a school play tomorrow morning, and he had promised her he would be there. He had promised. I can't. I have to get home. Harrison's expression didn't change. That wasn't a request. I have a daughter. Carter kept his voice quiet, steady, respectful. She's 7. I need to be there. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before taking this job. Harrison tapped the clipboard with one finger, a sharp punctuation mark to emphasize his point. You will cover the shift or you will find employment elsewhere. Carter felt something crack inside him. It was small at first, like a hairline fracture in glass. He had spent 2 months biting his tongue, taking the abuse, swallowing his pride because he needed the paycheck. But there was a limit, and Harrison had just found it. His daughter's face flashed through his mind. Lily sitting alone in the audience tomorrow morning, scanning the crowd for him, her face falling when she realized he wasn't there. Again. I've been doing double shifts for 2 weeks. Carter's voice was steady, but firm. The words felt strange in his mouth, like a language he hadn't spoken in years. I've cleaned every floor in this place. I've hauled trash, scrubbed toilets. I've done everything you asked, but I can't do tonight. Why don't you ask someone else? The hallway went silent. 2 other workers had been dusting nearby. They stopped, stared. One of them was Rosa Martinez, a woman in her 40s who worked in the kitchen. She had kind eyes and had slipped Carter extra food more than once. The other was James Park, a security guard who never said much but nodded at Carter when they passed in the halls. Both of them looked at Carter now like he had just jumped off a cliff. Harrison's face turned a shade darker. Excuse me? You heard me. Carter straightened up. He was taller than Harrison. Not by much, but enough. The mop handle felt solid in his hands. For 2 months he had made himself small, invisible, forgettable. But standing here now, looking down at this man who had ground him into the floor every single day, Carter felt something shift. His shoulders pulled back. His spine straightened. He was tired of disappearing. I'm not doing it. Harrison stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. You think you can talk to me like that? You think you're special? You're nothing, just another broke, desperate. Is there a problem here? The voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Everyone turned. Victoria Ashford stood at the end of the hall, backlit by the sunlight streaming through the windows. She wore a white blouse and black slacks. Her arms were crossed. Her expression was unreadable. The light behind her turned her into a silhouette, a figure carved from shadow and authority. Carter's heart slammed against his ribs. Of all the moments for her to appear, this was the worst. Harrison would spin this, make Carter look like the problem, and by tonight, Carter would be out on the street with no reference and no hope of finding work anywhere near Manhattan. Harrison straightened immediately. Miss Ashford, I was just addressing a staffing issue. Victoria didn't look at him. Her eyes were locked on Carter. She walked forward slowly. Her heels clicked against the marble. The sound echoed like a countdown. Each step measured, deliberate, inevitable. When she reached Carter, she stopped. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume, something floral, lavender maybe. The scent triggered something in the back of his mind, a memory so faint it felt like a dream. He couldn't place it. Victoria tilted her head slightly, studying him. Her eyes moved over his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. The scar on his left eyebrow, the line of his jaw, the way his hands gripped the mop handle. Carter didn't move, didn't breathe. He had no idea what she was looking for, but he could feel the weight of her attention like a physical thing. The silence stretched. Harrison shifted his weight, uncomfortable for the first time since Carter had met him. Then Victoria smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It was genuine, warm, almost relieved, like she had been searching for something and finally found it. Before Carter could process what was happening, Victoria stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him, and pressed her lips to his cheek. The world stopped. Harrison's mouth fell open. Rosa gasped. James dropped the duster he was holding. The sound of it hitting the floor was the only noise in the entire hallway. Victoria pulled back, still smiling. She didn't look at anyone else, just Carter. Her hand rested on his shoulder for a moment, warm through the thin fabric of his uniform. Her eyes were bright, almost wet, like she was holding back tears. "There you are." She said it softly, like she had been searching for him her entire life. Carter's brain was scrambling to catch up. He could still feel the warmth of her lips on his skin. His heart was pounding so hard, he thought it might crack a rib. Nothing made sense. This woman, this stranger, this person who lived in a world so far above his that they might as well be different species, had just kissed him. In front of everyone. And she was looking at him like he was the most important person in the room. The word died in his throat. He had no idea what to say. No idea what was happening. Victoria turned to Harrison, her expression shifting instantly. The warmth was gone, replaced by ice. "Felix, no, Harrison." She corrected herself without looking away from the butler. "Harrison will no longer be reporting to you." Harrison blinked. "Miss Ashford, I don't think... From today, he is my personal assistant." Her tone left no room for argument. "He will stay with me, whatever I need, whenever I need it. Do you understand?" Harrison looked like he had been slapped. "But Miss Ashford, he's just a..." "Do you understand?" Victoria repeated, her voice sharper now. Each word was a scalpel, precise and cutting. Harrison's jaw tightened. He glanced at Carter, then back at Victoria. The fury in his eyes was barely contained, a storm trapped behind glass. "Yes, of course." "Good." Victoria turned back to Carter. Her expression softened again, the ice melting into something gentler. "Come with me." She walked away without waiting for a response. Carter stood there, frozen. His mind was still trying to process what had just happened. The kiss, the announcement. The way Harrison looked like he wanted to murder him. Rosa nudged him from behind. "You better go," she whispered. Her voice was urgent, but there was something else in it. Hope, maybe, or fear. Carter couldn't tell. He glanced at Harrison. The older man's face was twisted with fury, but he said nothing. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Carter dropped the mop and followed Victoria down the hallway. She led him through a set of double doors into a sitting room he had never seen before. The walls were covered in bookshelves. A grand piano sat in the corner, black and gleaming. The windows overlooked the city skyline, a view that probably cost more per year than Carter had earned in his entire life. Victoria walked to the center of the room and turned to face him. Her arms were still crossed, but her posture was relaxed, almost casual, like she hadn't just turned his entire world upside down. "Sit." She gestured to a velvet couch. Carter didn't sit. "What just happened out there?" Victoria's smile returned. "I promoted you. You kissed me." "I did. Why?" She studied him for a long moment, like she was deciding how much to say. Then she sighed and walked to the window. The sunlight framed her like a painting, turning her dark hair into something almost ethereal. "Because I've been looking for you for a very long time." Carter's confusion deepened. "I don't understand." "You don't remember me." It wasn't a question. She said it like a fact, something she had already accepted. "I didn't think you would. Remember you from where?" Victoria turned to face him. The sunlight was behind her now, casting her face into shadow, but he could still see her eyes. They were bright, focused, burning with something he couldn't name. A summer camp 15 years ago in the mountains. Catskill Mountains, upstate New York. "You were there for 1 week. I was there for 3. Carter stared at her. His mind scrambled through memories. Summer camp, mountains. He had been to a camp once. He was maybe 14. His parents had scraped together enough money to send him for 1 week through some charity program. But that was so long ago he barely remembered it. Trees, a lake, campfires, everything else was a blur. "I was 12, Victoria continued. Her voice was quieter now, more careful. "I got lost during a hike. Ended up in the woods by myself. It was getting dark. I was terrified. And then I heard boars, wild ones, they were circling me." Carter's chest tightened. Something about her words felt familiar, like an echo of a dream, a fragment of a memory he couldn't quite grasp. "A boy found me." Victoria took a step closer. He was older, maybe 14 or 15. He scared the dogs away with a flashlight and a stick. "He stayed with me until someone from the camp came looking. He told me it would be okay. He held my hand the whole time." She took another step closer. "His name was Carter." The room felt smaller suddenly, warmer. Carter's hands were shaking. He didn't know why. Victoria's words were pulling something out of him, something buried deep and forgotten. "I tried to find you after that summer. Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper now. But you were gone. Your family moved. No forwarding address, no contact information. I searched for years, hired private investigators. They looked for Carter Hayes, but they couldn't find you. And then 2 months ago, you walked through my front door. But your last name was different. Morrison. I didn't realize it was you until today. Carter's throat was dry. He could feel something stirring in the back of his mind. A memory, faint and fragmented. The smell of pine trees. The sound of a girl crying. A small hand gripping his. Lavender. She had smelled like lavender. That's why the perfume had triggered something when she stood close to him in the hallway. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. I changed my name when I got married. Took my wife's last name, Sarah Morrison. She passed away 2 years ago. Victoria's expression softened. I'm sorry. Carter shook his head. Thank you, but... He trailed off. His thoughts were a tangled mess. He did remember something now, a girl, younger than him, lost in the woods, dogs growling in the darkness. He had found her by accident, heard her crying, followed the sound. The dogs had been feral, starving, desperate. He had used his flashlight to scare them off, made himself big and loud and threatening. The girl had been so scared she couldn't stop shaking. He had stayed with her, held her hand, told her stories to keep her calm. What else was he supposed to do? Leave her alone in the dark? You don't have to remember. Victoria walked over to a desk and pulled out a folder. She handed it to him. Your new salary, triple what you were making, plus housing assistance, medical coverage for you and your daughter. Carter opened the folder. The numbers on the page made his vision blur. $120,000 a year, a 2-bedroom apartment in Upper West Side, rent-free, full medical and dental insurance, a college fund for Lily. It was more money than he had seen in years, enough to pay off his debts, enough to give Lily a real life, enough to make him feel like maybe he could breathe again. Why are you doing this? His voice came out hoarse. Victoria looked at him like the answer was obvious. Because you saved me once, and I never forgot. Carter didn't know what to say. He stood there holding the folder, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath him. This didn't happen. People like him didn't get second chances. They didn't get rescued by billionaires who remembered them from 15 years ago. This was a fairy tale, and fairy tales didn't happen to broke single fathers from the Bronx. You start tomorrow. Victoria's voice was firm but not unkind. But for now, go home. Be with your daughter. She walked him to the door. Carter moved on autopilot, his mind still trying to catch up to what had just happened. As he reached for the door handle, Victoria spoke again. And Carter, he looked back. Thank you. Her voice was soft, vulnerable in a way that made her seem younger. For not leaving me in the woods. Carter left the penthouse in a daze. He walked through the service entrance past Harrison, who stared at him like he was a ghost. The older man didn't say a word, but his eyes promised violence. Carter didn't care. He climbed into his beat-up Honda and sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes, staring at the folder in his lap. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, the neighbor. Lily's asking when you're coming home. Carter started the car. He didn't understand what had just happened. He didn't know if he believed Victoria's story, but he knew one thing. For the first time in years, he had hope. The drive back to the Bronx took an hour. Traffic was thick, the kind of gridlock that made the city feel like it was suffocating under its own weight. Carter didn't mind. He needed the time to think, to process, to figure out what he was going to tell Lily. He couldn't tell her the truth because he didn't understand the truth himself. A woman he didn't remember had just changed his life because he had helped her once when he was 14 years old. It sounded insane. It sounded like the kind of story people told themselves to feel better about the world. But the folder on his passenger seat was real. The numbers were real. The contract was real. By the time he pulled up to his apartment building, the sun was setting. The building was a 5-story walk-up with cracked concrete steps and graffiti on the walls. Home. Carter grabbed the folder and headed inside. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the hallway outside his door. She was a woman in her 60s, originally from Taiwan, who had lived in the building longer than Carter had been alive. She watched Lily every morning before school and never asked for payment. Carter tried to give her money anyway, but she always refused. "You help me carry groceries," she would say. "We help each other." Lily was inside, sitting at the kitchen table with a coloring book. She looked up when Carter walked in, her face lighting up like the sun breaking through clouds. "Daddy!" She jumped off her chair and ran to him. Carter dropped to one knee and caught her in a hug. She smelled like crayons and strawberry shampoo. He held her tight, feeling the weight of the day finally settle into something manageable. "How was school, baby?" "Good. We learned about fractions. Mrs. Thompson said, I'm really good at them." "That's my smart girl." Carter pulled back to look at her. Lily had Sarah's eyes, green and bright and full of life. It hurt sometimes to look at her and see his wife staring back. But it was a good hurt, the kind that reminded him why he kept going. "Daddy, why are you home early?" Lily tilted her head, studying him with the kind of perception that only kids seem to have. "You never come home early." Carter hesitated. He didn't want to lie to her, but he also didn't want to explain something he didn't understand. "I had a good day at work, a really good day. They gave me a new job, a better one." Lily's eyes widened. "Does that mean we can get a bigger apartment? One where I have my own room?" Carter's throat tightened. "Yeah, baby, I think it does." Lily hugged him again, squeezing so hard it made his ribs ache. "This is the best day ever." Carter closed his eyes and held his daughter, feeling something break open in his chest. Hope was a dangerous thing. It made you believe in possibilities. It made you think that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. And for the first time in 2 years, Carter let himself believe it. That night, after Lily was asleep, Carter sat at the kitchen table and read through the contract again. Every word, every clause, looking for the catch. There had to be a catch. People didn't just hand you your life back because you did something nice 15 years ago, but the contract was straightforward. No hidden clauses, no strings attached, just a job offer, a salary, and benefits that would change everything. He signed it. The pen felt heavy in his hand, like he was signing something more than just a piece of paper. Like he was agreeing to step into a world he didn't belong in. But he thought about Lily, about the school play tomorrow, about the way she had asked for her own room with so much hope in her voice. He signed it. The next morning, Carter wore the same gray uniform, but everything else had changed. He reported directly to Victoria's private wing. No more scrubbing floors, no more hauling trash. He had a desk now, a phone, access to rooms he had never been allowed to enter. The other staff watched him like he was a bomb that might go off at any moment. Rosa smiled at him when they passed in the hallway. James nodded, a gesture of respect that felt unearned. But most of the others looked at him with suspicion, with envy, with the kind of resentment that came from watching someone leap over the line they had spent years crawling toward. Harrison was the worst. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just watched. Every time Carter walked through the hallway, he could feel Harrison's eyes on him. Cold, calculating, waiting for him to make a mistake. It was only a matter of time before Harrison made his move. Men like Harrison didn't let go of power easily. They held it in their fists until their knuckles turned white, until their fingers cramped, until someone pried it away by force. Carter had humiliated him yesterday, in front of the staff, in front of Victoria. Harrison wouldn't forget that. He wouldn't forgive it. But for now, Carter had a job to do. Victoria had given him a list of tasks that morning. Schedule meetings, organize files, answer emails. It was assistant work, but it was clean work. Work that didn't leave his hands raw and his back aching. Work that let him wear a clean shirt instead of a sweat-stained uniform. He sat at his desk and worked through the list methodically, one task at a time. Around noon, Victoria called him into her office. The room was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Central Park. Her desk was carved from dark wood, polished to a mirror shine. She sat behind it reviewing documents, her expression focused and sharp. When Carter walked in, she looked up and smiled. That same warm smile from yesterday, like he was someone important. "How are you settling in?" "Fine." Carter shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the attention. "The desk is great. The computer is nice." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Nice? I mean, it's better than anything I've used before," she laughed. It was a small sound, but genuine. "Carter, you don't have to be so formal. We're not strangers, aren't we? The words came out before Carter could stop them. He winced. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... No, you're right. Victoria set down her pen. We are strangers. But we weren't always. And I'm hoping we won't be again. Carter didn't know what to say to that. He stood there, feeling like an intruder in a world he didn't understand. Victoria stood up and walked around the desk. She moved with a kind of confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. When she reached Carter, she stopped. Her expression was softer now, less guarded. I want to meet her. Your daughter. Carter's stomach tightened. Wait, am I? Because she's important to you. Victoria said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I want to know the people who matter. Carter hesitated. Lily was the most important thing in his life, the only thing that mattered. Letting Victoria into that part of his world felt dangerous, like he was giving her ammunition. But he also couldn't say no. This woman had just given him a lifeline. The least he could do was let her meet his daughter. Okay, when? Tomorrow, after school. We'll pick her up together. The next afternoon, Carter stood outside Lily's school with Victoria beside him. The school was a public elementary in the Bronx, underfunded and overcrowded, but it was the best Carter could afford. Victoria looked out of place here, her designer clothes and polished shoes a stark contrast to the cracked pavement and chain-link fences. But she didn't seem to notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. When Lily came out, her face lit up. Daddy! She ran over and threw her arms around him. Then she noticed Victoria and stopped. Her eyes went wide. Who's that? This is Miss Ashford. Carter glanced at Victoria. She's my boss. Lily stared at Victoria like she had stepped out of a fairy tale. Are you a princess? Victoria laughed. It was the first time Carter had heard her laugh like that. Genuine, unguarded, surprised. No, but I like ice cream. Do you? Lily nodded so hard her hair bounced. They stopped at a small shop near the park. Victoria bought Lily 2 scoops of chocolate, and they sat on a bench while Lily talked nonstop about her teacher and her drawings, and a boy in her class who ate glue. Victoria listened to all of it. She didn't check her phone, didn't look bored. She just sat there, smiling, asking questions like Lily was the most interesting person in the world. Carter watched them and felt something shift in his chest, something warm and terrifying and hopeful. When they dropped Lily off at Mrs. Chen's apartment, the little girl hugged Victoria before running inside. Victoria stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching the door close. She's wonderful. Her voice was quiet. Carter nodded. She's the only thing I've done right. Victoria looked at him. You've done more than you think. That night, Carter lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Something had shifted. He didn't know what, but for the first time in years, he felt like maybe things could be okay. He was wrong. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. It started with a nightmare. Carter was asleep in the small room off Victoria's office. She had insisted he stay close in case she needed something. The room was nicer than his apartment. Soft bed, clean sheets, a window that overlooked the garden. Around 2 in the morning, he heard a scream. He was on his feet before he fully woke up. He ran into Victoria's bedroom without knocking. She was sitting up in bed, her face pale, her hands shaking. Her hair was tangled. Her eyes were wild. Victoria. Carter moved toward her slowly. It's okay. You're okay. She looked at him like she didn't recognize him at first. Then her face crumpled and she started to cry. Carter sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't think. He just wrapped his arms around her the way he would with Lily after a bad dream. Victoria buried her face in his shoulder and sobbed. Her whole body shook. I saw them again, she whispered. I was alone. No one came. Carter held her tighter. You're not alone. She pulled back just enough to look at him. Her eyes were red and wet. You held me like this. That night. You told me it was going to be okay. Carter felt something click into place. A memory, faint but real. A small girl crying in the dark. The sound of growling in the distance. The way she clung to him like he was the only solid thing in the world. Lavender. Her hair had smelled like lavender. I remember. He said it softly. Victoria's breath hitched. You do? Not everything, but enough. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the 12-year-old girl hiding behind the wall she had built. You were scared, but you didn't run. You stayed close to me. Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her face. You made me feel safe. No one's done that since. They sat like that for a long time. The city lights filtered through the curtains. The room was quiet except for the sound of her breathing. Eventually, Victoria leaned back against the pillows. She looked exhausted. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Don't, Carter's voice was firm. You don't have to apologize. She smiled faintly. You're the only person who says that. Carter stood up. Try to sleep. I'll be in the next room. Victoria reached out and caught his hand. Her fingers were warm. Thank you for staying. He nodded and left, but someone else had been watching. Harrison had seen the whole thing on the security feed. He sat in his office replaying the footage. Carter entering Victoria's room, sitting on her bed, holding her. To anyone else, it might have looked innocent, but Harrison didn't see innocence. He saw opportunity. The next morning, Harrison called a meeting with the senior staff. He didn't invite Carter. Miss Ashford is becoming too attached. Harrison's voice was calm but firm. This Carter character is taking advantage of her trust. We need to do something before it goes too far. One of the maids frowned, but Miss Ashford chose him. We can protect her. Harrison interrupted. Even if she doesn't see the danger. By the end of the week, Harrison had a plan. Harrison's plan started small. A rumor here, a misplaced item there. He knew how to plant seeds of doubt, how to make people question what they thought they knew. The staff whispered during their breaks. They exchanged glances when Carter walked past. Rosa tried to warn him one morning in the kitchen. Be careful. Harrison's watching you. Carter thanked her but didn't take it seriously enough. He should have. Men like Harrison didn't just watch. They waited. They prepared. They struck when you thought you were safe. The first blow came on a Thursday morning. Carter was organizing files in Victoria's office when the intercom buzzed. There's someone here to see Mr. Morrison. The voice belonged to Thomas Chen, the head of security. He sounded uncomfortable. Carter frowned. Who? A woman. Says it's urgent. Carter's stomach tightened. The only woman who would come looking for him was Mrs. Chen, and she would have called first. He took the elevator down to the main floor. The lobby was all white marble and crystal chandeliers. A woman stood near the entrance, her back to him. She had blonde hair and wore a black dress. When she heard his footsteps, she turned around. Carter had never seen her before in his life. Carter! The woman's face crumpled. She ran toward him with tears streaming down her face. Oh my God, I finally found you! Carter took a step back. His mind raced through possibilities. Wrong person, mistaken identity, some kind of scam. But the woman threw her arms around him before he could speak. She smelled like cheap perfume and desperation. Carter, please. You can't just disappear like that. We need to talk about the money. I don't know you. Carter's voice came out flat. He tried to pull away, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Several staff members had stopped to watch. Rosa stood near the kitchen entrance, her face tight with concern. James was by the elevator, his hand moving instinctively toward his radio. The woman pulled back, her eyes wide and wounded. How can you say that? After everything we had? After you borrowed $5,000 from me? Carter felt the floor tilt beneath him. What? I've never borrowed money from anyone except the hospital. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a piece of paper. She unfolded it with shaking hands. A promissory note. Your signature. Right here. She thrust it toward him. Carter looked at the paper. It was dated 3 years ago. The handwriting looked similar to his. Similar enough that someone who didn't know better might believe it. But Carter knew his own signature. He knew the way he looped his R, the way his T crossed at a specific angle. This was close, but it wasn't his. This is fake. Someone forged my signature. The woman's face hardened. So now I'm a liar? Carter, we dated for 6 months. You told me you loved me. You said you needed money to help your wife with medical bills. I gave it to you because I believed you. And then Sarah died and you just vanished. I never dated you. Carter's voice rose despite his best efforts to stay calm. I was married to Sarah. I never cheated on her. The woman started crying harder, louder. People were gathering now. More staff, a few residents from the upper floors who had come down to see what the commotion was about. And standing at the back, watching with cold calculation, was Harrison. Is there a problem? Victoria's voice cut through the noise like a knife. She stood at the top of the staircase, perfectly composed, her face unreadable. The woman looked up at her, then back at Carter. Is this her? Is this why you won't talk to me? Because you found someone richer? Victoria descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached the lobby, she positioned herself between Carter and the woman. Who are you? The woman wiped her eyes. Amanda Brooks. Carter and I were involved 3 years ago. He owes me $5,000. Victoria glanced at Carter. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. She turned back to Amanda. Do you have proof of this relationship? Photos? Text messages? Emails? Amanda hesitated. I have the promissory note. Victoria held out her hand. May I see it? Amanda handed it over. Victoria studied the paper for a long moment, her expression giving nothing away. Then she folded it carefully and handed it back. This signature is forged. Carter's handwriting doesn't loop the R this way. I've seen his signature dozens of times. Amanda's face flushed red. But how would you know? Victoria's smile was cold. Because I pay attention, and because I know Carter would never forge documents or lie about something like this. Now, I suggest you leave before I call the police and report you for fraud. Amanda looked between Victoria and Carter, her act crumbling. Someone said. She turned and ran for the door. The lobby went silent. Everyone stared at Victoria, then at Carter, then back at Victoria. Harrison was nowhere to be seen. He had slipped away during the confrontation. Smart. Victoria turned to Carter. My office, now. They rode the elevator in silence. Carter could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. Victoria believed him. She had defended him without hesitation. But the fact that someone had gone to the trouble of forging documents and hiring an actress meant this was just the beginning. When they reached Victoria's office, she closed the door and locked it. Then she walked to her desk and pulled out her phone. I'm installing security cameras in your workspace. Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact. No arguments. Someone is trying to frame you, and I'm not going to let it happen. You believe me? Carter's voice came out rougher than he intended. The question sounded stupid even as he asked it, but he needed to hear her say it. Victoria looked at him like he had just asked if the sky was blue. Of course I believe you. You're not the kind of man who You're not the kind of man who cheats, and you're definitely not the kind of man who would forge documents. Carter felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he hadn't realized was there. Thank you. Victoria walked over to him. She was close enough that he could see the flecks of green in her blue eyes, the way her jaw tightened when she was angry. You don't have to thank me for trusting you. That's what people who care about each other do. The word hung in the air between them. Care. It was a small word that carried too much weight. Carter didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure he had the right to say anything. Victoria cleared her throat and stepped back, breaking the moment. I'm going to find out who's behind this. And when I do, they're going to regret it. Over the next week, Victoria had cameras installed throughout Carter's workspace. She also hired a private investigator to look into Amanda Brooks. The investigator came back with results faster than expected. Amanda was an actress, struggling, desperate for work, living in a studio apartment in Queens. Someone had paid her $2,000 to play the role of Carter's ex-girlfriend. The payment came from a shell account that couldn't be traced. But there were only a few people in the penthouse with the resources and motivation to do something like this. Harrison was at the top of the list. Victoria confronted him one afternoon in the staff quarters. Carter wasn't there to see it, but Rosa told him about it later. Victoria had walked into Harrison's office without knocking. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face carved from ice. I know what you're doing. Harrison looked up from his desk, his expression perfectly neutral. Miss Ashford, I don't know what you mean. Victoria took a step into the room. You hired someone to discredit Carter. You forged documents. You staged a scene in my lobby. Harrison's face didn't change. Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof? Not yet, but I will. And when I do, you are finished. Harrison stood up slowly. He was shorter than Victoria, but he carried himself like he owned the room. Miss Ashford, with all due respect, I've served your family for 35 years. I was here when your father built this empire. I was here when your mother passed away. I've protected this family from threats you don't even know about." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "And now you think Carter is a threat?" Harrison's voice dropped. "I think he's a man who appeared out of nowhere and gained access to everything you have. I think he's using a story from 15 years ago to manipulate you. And I think you're too blinded by sentiment to see it. Get out." Victoria's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a command that couldn't be ignored. Harrison blinked. "Excuse me? You're fired. Pack your things and leave. I'll have your severance check ready by tomorrow." Harrison's face finally cracked. Anger flooded in, turning his skin a mottled red. "You can't fire me. Your father hired me. Only he can terminate my employment." Victoria pulled out her phone and dialed. The call connected after 2 rings. "Father, I need you to fire Harrison Cole." There was a pause. Victoria's expression didn't change. "Because he's been embezzling from the family charity fund for the past 10 years and using his position to sabotage people I trust." Another pause. "No, I have proof. I had an investigator look into his finances. He's been skimming $500,000 over the years." She listened for a moment, then handed the phone to Harrison. "Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Harrison took the phone with shaking hands. His face had gone pale. He listened to whatever Gregory Ashford was saying on the other end. Then he hung up and set the phone on the desk. He looked at Victoria with something close to hatred. "You'll regret this." The words came out low and venomous. Victoria didn't flinch. "No, you will." Harrison left that afternoon. Security escorted him through the lobby while the entire staff watched. He didn't look at anyone, didn't say goodbye. He just walked out with his box of personal belongings and got into a cab. Carter watched from the window of his office. He felt no satisfaction, just a cold certainty that this wasn't over. Men like Harrison didn't walk away quietly. They burned everything on their way out. For 2 weeks, things were quiet, too quiet. Carter settled into his new role. Victoria introduced him to her routines, her schedule, the way she liked her coffee, and how she preferred her meetings structured. They worked side by side most days. She would review contracts while he organized correspondence. They would break for lunch in her private dining room. She asked about Lily constantly. How was school? What did she like to draw? Did she have friends? Carter found himself talking more than he had in years. About Sarah, about how hard it had been watching her fade, about the guilt he still carried for not being able to save her. Victoria listened to all of it without judgment, without pity, just quiet understanding. One afternoon, Victoria asked if she could take Lily to an art gallery. "There's an exhibition for young artists. I think she'd love it." Carter hesitated. Taking Lily into Victoria's world felt dangerous, like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. But Lily had asked about Victoria every day since they'd met. "When can I see the princess lady again?" How could he say no? They went on a Saturday. The gallery was in Chelsea, a converted warehouse with white walls and skylights. Lily's eyes went wide the moment they walked in. She had never seen anything like it. Paintings taller than she was. Sculptures made from metal and glass. Victoria walked beside her, pointing out details, explaining techniques in a way that didn't talk down to a 7-year-old. Lily soaked it all in like a sponge. At the end of the exhibition, there was a room where kids could create their own art. Lily made a painting of 3 figures standing together. One tall with dark hair, one medium-sized, one small. When she was done, she showed it to Victoria with paint-stained hands. "That's you, me, and Daddy. We're a family." Victoria's eyes went bright. She knelt down to Lily's level. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can I keep it?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. Carter watched from a few feet away, feeling something crack open in his chest. This moment, this connection, it felt fragile and precious and terrifying. Because what happened when it ended? What happened when Victoria realized that bringing them into her life was more complicated than she thought? But Victoria looked at him over Lily's head, and her expression was so open, so genuine, that Carter let himself believe, just for a moment, that maybe this could work. The belief lasted exactly 4 more days. On Thursday morning, Gregory Ashford returned from London. He arrived without warning, walking into the penthouse at 7 in the morning with 2 suitcases and an expression that could freeze fire. Diane followed him, Victoria's stepmother, elegant and cold in a cream-colored suit. Behind them came Marcus, Victoria's older brother, 30 years old, blonde hair perfectly styled, suit that probably cost more than Carter's car. The staff scrambled into formation. Even without Harrison, the hierarchy held. Gregory Ashford commanded respect just by existing. He was 58 years old but looked younger. Sharp features, steel gray hair, eyes that could read a balance sheet or a person with equal precision. He built his empire from nothing, and he protected it with the kind of ruthlessness that made competitors think twice. "Where's Victoria?" His voice carried through the penthouse like thunder. One of the maids stammered, "She's in her office, Mr. Ashford, with her assistant." Gregory's eyes narrowed. The assistant. Right. Marcus, you are with me. They headed for the elevator. Carter was reviewing Victoria's schedule when her office door burst open. Gregory walked in like he owned the place, which technically he did. Victoria stood up from behind her desk. "Father, I didn't know you were coming back. We need to talk." Gregory's eyes flicked to Carter. Alone. Victoria's jaw tightened. "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Carter." Gregory studied Carter for a long moment. Carter felt like a specimen under a microscope. Being examined, judged, found wanting. "Fine." Gregory turned back to Victoria. "I heard Harrison was fired." "Yes, for embezzlement and sabotage. And I heard you've hired a new personal assistant, someone with no experience, no qualifications, and a very convenient story about rescuing you 15 years ago." "It's not convenient. It's true." Victoria's voice was steel. "Carter saved my life, and I'm not going to apologize for giving him a job he's more than qualified for." Gregory walked to the window. He looked out at the city like he was surveying his kingdom. "Marcus, what do you know about Mr. Morrison?" Marcus smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. He's 35 years old, single father, widower. His wife died of cancer 2 years ago, leaving him with $23,000 in medical debt. He's worked as an electrician, a janitor, and most recently as cleaning staff here. No college degree, no assets. Living in a 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx with his 7-year-old daughter. Victoria's face flushed. "Is there a point to this?" Marcus continued like she hadn't spoken. "He changed his last name when he got married. Used to be Carter Hayes, which is probably why the private investigators you hired 15 years ago couldn't find him. Very convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" The implication was clear. Carter felt anger rise in his throat. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay quiet. This wasn't his fight, not yet. Victoria stepped around her desk. "Carter didn't plan this. He didn't even know who I was until I told him. He's not trying to manipulate me." Gregory finally turned away from the window. "Then what is he trying to do?" Victoria's voice rose. "He's trying to survive. He's trying to give his daughter a better life. And I'm helping him because 15 years ago, he helped me when he had nothing to gain from it. Or maybe he did help you." Gregory's voice was calm, measured, deadly. "And maybe he spent the last 15 years hoping you'd remember. Hoping you'd find him. Hoping he could cash in on one good deed." Carter couldn't stay quiet anymore. The words came out before he could stop them. "I didn't even remember her until she told me. I changed my name. I moved states. I had a wife, a daughter, a life. I wasn't sitting around waiting for some rich girl to rescue me." The room went silent. Gregory's eyes locked onto Carter. There it was, the spark he'd been waiting for. "Do you love my daughter, Mr. Morrison?" The question hit like a punch. Carter's mouth went dry. I care about her very much. That's not what I asked. Do you love her?" Carter looked at Victoria. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Hope, fear, vulnerability. He thought about the past month, the way she listened to him talk about Sarah without judgment, the way she knelt down to talk to Lily like she was the most important person in the world, the way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't paying attention, like he was something precious. Yes. The word came out quiet but certain. I love her. Gregory's expression didn't change. And what exactly do you think you can offer her? Carter's anger flared again. I can't offer her money. I can't offer her mansions or private jets or whatever other toys she's used to. but I can offer her loyalty, honesty, someone who sees her as a person instead of a bank account. Gregory walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate. When he was close enough to touch, he stopped. You think those things are enough? Carter met his eyes without flinching. I think they're the only things that matter. Gregory studied him for another long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You have 6 months. Carter blinked. What? 6 months? Gregory turned back to Victoria. If after 6 months you still want him in your life, I'll accept it. But during that time, he has to prove he's not just another opportunist. He has to prove he can exist in our world without falling apart. And he has to prove that what you have is real and not just nostalgia for a childhood crush. Victoria started to protest. Father, that's not fair. Gregory's voice cut through her objection. That's fair, because if he loves you, he'll stay. And if he's using you, he'll run the moment things get difficult. The choice is his. All eyes turned to Carter. He could feel the weight of it pressing down on his shoulders. 6 months of being tested, 6 months of being scrutinized, 6 months of proving he was worthy of someone who lived in a world he barely understood. He thought about walking away, about taking Lily back to the Bronx and forgetting this whole thing happened. It would be easier, safer. But then he looked at Victoria, really looked at her, and saw everything he had been too scared to admit. I'll stay. The words came out firm. I'll prove it. Gregory nodded. Then we're done here. He walked out without another word. Marcus followed, but not before giving Carter a look that promised future conflict. When the door closed, Victoria let out a breath she'd been holding. Carter, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was coming back. I should have warned you. Carter shook his head. It's fine. He's protecting you. I get it. But 6 months? Victoria walked over to him. She looked exhausted. He's testing you. Testing us. If we make it through, he'll let it go. And if we don't, then I was wrong about you. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. But I'm not wrong. I know I'm not. Carter wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that love was enough. But he'd learned the hard way that life didn't care what you believed. Life gave you what you could survive, and sometimes not even that. The testing started immediately. Marcus took charge of it with the enthusiasm of someone who enjoyed watching people fail. He invited Victoria and Carter to a charity gala at the Plaza Hotel. Black tie, $500 a plate, the kind of event where everyone knew everyone, and outsiders were spotted immediately. Carter didn't own a tux. Marcus knew that. He sent one over the day before the event. It fit perfectly, which somehow made it worse, like Marcus had measured him without asking, studied him like an insect. The gala was everything Carter expected and worse. Crystal chandeliers, orchestra playing classical music, people in clothes that cost more than his annual salary used to be. Victoria stayed by his side, introducing him to senators and CEOs and people whose names he'd only seen in newspapers. This is Carter Morrison, my assistant. The word assistant always came with a particular tone, like it explained everything, like it justified his presence. A woman in diamonds asked him what he did before working for Victoria. I was an electrician. The woman's smile froze. How interesting. Then she turned and walked away. Marcus appeared at Carter's elbow. Champagne? He held out a glass. Carter took it, even though he hated champagne. The bubbles felt like tiny needles on his tongue. Marcus smiled. You look uncomfortable. I'm fine. No, you're not. Marcus's voice dropped. You're standing here in a borrowed tux, surrounded by people who can smell desperation from a mile away, trying to pretend you belong. But you don't, and everyone knows it. Carter set down the champagne glass harder than necessary. If you have something to say it. Marcus leaned in. My sister is brilliant. She's kind, she's naive, and she has terrible taste in men. You're not the first person to try to use her, but you will be the last one I allow to get close. Stay away from her, or I'll make sure you regret it. Before Carter could respond, Victoria appeared. Is there a problem? Marcus's face transformed into a pleasant smile. Just getting to know Carter better. The music started. Couples moved onto the dance floor. A man in a navy suit approached them. Tall, blonde, handsome in the way that came from good genes and better grooming. Brandon Whitmore. He smiled at Victoria like they were old friends. Victoria, you look stunning. Brandon, Victoria's voice was polite but not warm. "This is Carter Morrison, my assistant. Carter, this is Brandon Whitmore. Our families have known each other for years." Brandon shook Carter's hand. His grip was firm, competitive. "Pleasure." He turned back to Victoria. "May I have this dance?" Victoria hesitated. Carter saw the calculation in her eyes. Refusing would be rude. Accepting would leave Carter standing alone like a servant waiting for orders. She looked at Carter. "I'll be right back." He watched her walk onto the dance floor with Brandon. Watched the way Brandon's hands settled on her waist with too much familiarity. Watched the way they moved together like they'd done this 1,000 times. Marcus appeared at his shoulder again. "Brandon's father owns Whitmore Bank, $300 billion in assets. Brandon went to Harvard, runs their investment division. He's been interested in Victoria for years. My father approves of him." Carter's jaw tightened. "Good for Brandon." Marcus laughed. "You really think you can compete with that? With family, money, and connections in a future that's already mapped out? Victoria's not a prize to be won." "Oh, Carter." Marcus's voice was soft, almost pitying. "In our world, everything's a prize. And the people who pretend otherwise are just the ones who already lost." Carter left the gala early, told Victoria he wasn't feeling well, which wasn't entirely a lie. His chest felt tight. His hands shook. He took a cab back to the Bronx and sat in his apartment, staring at the wall. Mrs. Chen knocked on his door around midnight. She brought tea and sat with him without asking questions. After a while, she spoke. "My husband died 20 years ago. Heart attack. One day he was there, next day he was gone. People told me to move on, find someone new. But I didn't want someone new. I wanted him." She poured them both more tea. "But life doesn't ask what you want. It asks what you can survive. And then it gives you just enough to keep breathing." Carter looked at her. "How did you keep going?" Mrs. Chen smiled. "I woke up every morning. I put one foot in front of the other. I helped my neighbors. I watched their children. I found purpose in small things. Because the big things, the things that matter, they're too heavy to carry alone. Do you love her? Yes. Then fight for her, but not because she's rich or because she can give you things. Fight for her because when you're with her, you're more yourself than you have ever been." That's rare, Carter. That's worth fighting for. Over the next month, Marcus escalated his campaign. He invited Victoria to dinners where Carter wasn't welcome. Scheduled meetings during times when Carter would normally see Lily. Arranged situations designed to make Carter feel small and out of place. Brandon appeared constantly. At the penthouse, at business meetings, at lunches and dinners and events, always polite, always appropriate, always there. Victoria saw what was happening. She tried to shield Carter from it, but there was only so much she could do. Her father was watching, her brother was maneuvering, and Brandon was patient, like someone who knew eventually Victoria would realize Carter was more trouble than he was worth. The newspapers didn't help. Someone leaked their relationship to the press. New York heiress dates former janitor, modern Cinderella, or gold digger. The article was brutal. It detailed Carter's background, his debts, his dead wife, his daughter. It painted him as a desperate man who saw an opportunity and took it. Victoria wanted to sue. Carter talked her out of it. Fighting it will only make it worse. Just let it die. But it didn't die. The story grew. Gossip blogs picked it up. Social media exploded. People had opinions. Strong ones. Some thought it was romantic. Most thought Carter was using her. The attention was suffocating. Carter couldn't go anywhere without people recognizing him. Staring. Judging. One morning he took Lily to school and another parent cornered him. "Is it true you're dating Victoria Ashford?" Carter tried to be polite. "I don't talk about my personal life." The parent smirked. "Must be nice. Landing a billionaire. All your problems solved." Carter felt his temper flare. He bit it back. Smiled tightly. "Have a good day." But inside he was crumbling. Every look, every whisper, every article that questioned his motives. It added up, wore him down, made him wonder if everyone was right, if he was deluding himself into thinking he could make this work. Victoria found him one night on the balcony of her penthouse. He was staring out at the city, hands gripping the railing. She came up beside him. "Talk to me. What's there to say?" Carter's voice was flat. "Your family hates me. The press thinks I'm a leech. Everyone's waiting for me to fail. Maybe they're right. Don't. Victoria's voice was fierce. Don't let them do this to you. They don't know you. They don't know us. Maybe they do. Carter turned to face her. Maybe I'm exactly what they think I am. A broke guy who got lucky and doesn't know when to quit. You don't believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. Carter ran a hand through his hair. I can't give you what Brandon can. I can't take you to the Hamptons or buy you jewelry or introduce you to senators. I'm just a guy trying not to drown. I don't want Brandon. Victoria's voice broke slightly. I want you. Why? The question came out harsh. Why me? What do I have that someone like Brandon doesn't? You see me, Victoria's eyes were bright. Not my money, not my name, me. When I wake up from nightmares, you don't judge me. When I talk about my mother, you listen. When I'm scared, you make me feel safe. That's not something money can buy. They stood there in silence. The city sprawled below them. Millions of lights, millions of leaves, millions of people who would never understand what it felt like to love someone from a different world. Finally, Carter spoke. 6 months. I'll make it through your father's test. I'll prove I'm not using you. But after that, this has to be on my terms too. Not just yours, not just your family's. Ours. Victoria nodded. Ours. 3 months into the 6-month trial, Marcus made his final move. He arranged a dinner at Le Bernardin, 3 Michelin stars, the kind of place where reservations were made 6 months in advance and the waiters moved like ballet dancers. The guest list was strategic. Gregory and Diane, Marcus, Victoria, Carter, and Brandon Whitmore. Carter knew it was a setup the moment Victoria told him. Her face was tight, apologetic. My father insists you come. He wants to see how you handle yourself in social situations. Carter understood what that meant. Gregory wanted to watch him fail in front of witnesses, wanted to prove he didn't belong. The night of the dinner, Carter dressed in the same borrowed tux. It still fit perfectly, still felt like someone else's skin. He met Victoria in the lobby of her building. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than his first car. Simple, elegant. She looked at him with concern. You don't have to do this. We can cancel. No. Carter's voice was steady even though his stomach was churning. I'm not running. I said 6 months. I meant it. They arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early. Marcus was already there, sitting at a table near the window with Brandon. Both men stood when Victoria approached. Brandon pulled out her chair with practiced ease, the kind of gesture that came from years of etiquette training. Carter sat across from them, feeling like he was walking into an ambush. Gregory and Diane arrived exactly on time. They took their seats without fanfare. The waiter appeared immediately with menus and wine recommendations. Carter didn't understand half the words on the menu. Amuse-bouche, confit, reduction. He ordered something at random, hoping it wouldn't embarrass him. Brandon launched into conversation immediately. Victoria, did you hear about the Whitmore Foundation's new initiative? We're partnering with Columbia to fund scholarships for underprivileged students. $5 million over the next 3 years. That's wonderful. Victoria's voice was polite but not engaged. Brandon smiled. I thought you might be interested in collaborating. Your family's charity work is legendary. Perhaps we could combine resources. Gregory leaned forward slightly. That's an excellent idea. The Ashford Foundation has been looking for the right partners. Brandon, why don't you send me a proposal? Of course, sir. I'll have my team draft something this week. Carter ate his appetizer in silence. Some kind of fish with sauce he couldn't identify. It tasted expensive. That was the only thing he could say about it. Marcus turned to him. Carter, Brandon was just telling me about his work in investment banking. Did you ever consider finance as a career? Carter met his eyes. No, I was too busy trying to keep the lights on. Marcus's smile didn't falter. Of course. Different priorities. Brandon jumped in, his tone friendly but condescending. There's nothing wrong with honest work. My grandfather started as a bank teller, worked his way up through determination and smart decisions. Carter set down his fork. The comparison was clear. Brandon's grandfather had climbed from teller to bank owner. Carter had gone from electrician to janitor to charity case. Is there a point to this? The table went quiet. Brandon's smile froze. Gregory's eyes narrowed. Victoria put her hand on Carter's arm, a warning. Carter shook it off gently. No, I'm serious. Are we here to have dinner or to make me feel like I don't belong? Because if it's the latter, you don't have to waste your time. I already know I don't fit in your world. The question is whether that matters. Gregory's expression was unreadable. Does it matter to you, Mr. Morrison? Yes. Carter's voice was firm. Because if Victoria only wants me when I'm pretending to be someone I'm not, then we don't have anything real. But if she wants me because of who I am, then all of this doesn't matter at all. He gestured to the restaurant, the table, the expensive meal. This isn't love, this is theater. And I'm tired of performing. Brandon's face hardened. That's easy to say when you're not the one paying for dinner. Carter stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. You're right. I can't pay for dinner here. I can't afford any of this. But I can pay my rent. I can feed my daughter. I can work an honest job and sleep at night knowing I didn't lie or cheat or manipulate anyone to get where I am. Can you say the same? The words hung in the air like smoke. Brandon's face flushed red. Gregory's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. Marcus looked furious. Diane seemed amused. Victoria stood up as well. Carter's right. This isn't dinner. This is a test. And frankly, I'm tired of watching you all try to break him. She turned to her father. You wanted 6 months. You wanted to see if he could survive in our world. But you're not testing whether he can survive. You're testing whether he'll break himself trying to become someone he's not. And that's not fair. Gregory studied his daughter for a long moment. Then he looked at Carter. Sit down, both of you. Carter hesitated. Victoria touched his arm. Please. They sat. Gregory folded his hands on the table. Mr. Morrison, do you know why I made millions in real estate? Because you're good at reading people. Gregory nodded. Because I know when someone is lying and when they're telling the truth. Most people lie. They lie about their intentions, their capabilities, their motives. But you don't lie, even when it would benefit you, even when it would make things easier. Carter didn't respond. He didn't know what to say. Gregory continued, I don't like you, not because you're poor or uneducated or from the Bronx. I don't like you because my daughter is the most important thing in my world, and you're a variable I can't control. But I'm starting to think that might be exactly what she needs. He turned to Brandon. Mr. Whitmore, thank you for joining us, but I think this dinner is over. Brandon's face went white. Sir, I don't understand. Gregory's voice was final. My daughter has made her choice, and I'm going to respect it. Brandon stood up slowly. He looked at Victoria with something close to disbelief. You're really choosing him? Over everything we could have had? Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. Brandon, you're a good man. You'll make someone very happy. But that someone isn't me. Brandon left without another word. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but one glance at his father's face stopped him. Diane picked up her wine glass and took a sip, watching everything with detached interest. Gregory turned back to Carter. You have my blessing. But understand this, if you hurt her, if you betray her, if you prove me wrong, I will destroy you in ways you can't imagine. I believe you. Carter's voice was steady, and I promise you won't have to. They finished dinner in relative peace. The conversation shifted to neutral topics. Business, charity work, Lily's progress in school. By the end of the meal, Marcus had retreated into sullen silence. Victoria was radiant. Carter felt like he could breathe for the first time in months. When they left the restaurant, Victoria pulled him aside on the sidewalk. Thank you. For what? For being you, for not backing down, for showing my father that you're not afraid of him. Carter smiled. I'm terrified of him. Good. Victoria laughed. You should be, but he respects you now. That's more than most people get. The next 2 months passed like a dream. Carter moved out of his Bronx apartment and into a place Victoria helped him find in Queens. 2 bedrooms, close to a good school for Lily, affordable on his salary. Not charity, not a handout, just a fresh start. Lily loved it. She decorated her room with drawings and stuffed animals. She made friends in the neighborhood. She asked about Victoria constantly. When can she visit? Is she coming for dinner? Does she like macaroni and cheese? Victoria came over one Saturday afternoon. She brought art supplies and spent 3 hours painting with Lily. They made a mess of the kitchen table, covering it with construction paper and glitter and glue. Carter watched from the doorway, feeling something settle in his chest. This was what family looked like. Not perfect, not polished, just real. After Lily went to bed, Victoria and Carter sat on the couch together. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of traffic outside. Victoria leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" Victoria's voice was hesitant. "That night in the woods, when you found me. Do you remember what you said?" Carter thought back. It was so long ago. The memory was clearer now than it had been months ago, but still fragmented. "I said a lot of things, trying to keep you calm. You told me that sometimes the scariest moments become the most important ones, because they show us who we really are." Victoria lifted her head to look at him. "And you were right. That night showed me who you were. Someone brave and kind and selfless. And every day since you came into my life, you've proven it again." Carter's throat tightened. He wasn't good with words, wasn't good at expressing things that felt too big for language. But he tried anyway. "You showed me something too, that it's possible to start over. That the past doesn't have to define you. That love isn't about what you can offer someone. It's about who you become when you're with them." Victoria kissed him. It was soft and tentative and perfect. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. "I love you. I love you too." They sat there in the quiet apartment, holding each other, and for the first time since Sarah died, Carter felt like he was allowed to be happy. The 6 months ended on a Tuesday in March. Gregory called Victoria and Carter to his office at the Ashford Holdings building downtown. The office was on the 40th floor, all glass and steel, with a view that stretched to the horizon. Gregory sat behind a massive desk, hands folded, expression neutral. Carter and Victoria sat across from him. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Gregory spoke. "You've made it through, against my expectations, against Marcus's interference, against every obstacle we put in your way. I'm impressed, thank you." Carter's voice was steady. Gregory leaned back in his chair. "But the trial isn't really over, Mr. Morrison. It never will be. Every day you're with my daughter, you'll be tested. By society, by people who think you're not good enough, by moments when the difference in your backgrounds becomes impossible to ignore. Can you handle that?" Carter thought about the last 6 months, the galas and the gossip and the constant scrutiny, the feeling of being watched, judged, found wanting. But he also thought about Victoria's laugh when Lily made jokes, the way she held his hand during movies, the quiet moments in the early morning when they drank coffee together and didn't need to say anything at all. "Yes, I can handle it, because she's worth it." Gregory nodded slowly. "Then you have my full support, both of you." He stood up and walked around the desk, extended his hand to Carter. "Welcome to the family." They shook. Gregory's grip was firm, testing. But when Carter met his eyes, he saw something that might have been approval. Victoria was crying, happy tears streaming down her face. She hugged her father, then turned and hugged Carter. "We did it. We actually did it." Carter held her close. "Now comes the hard part." Victoria pulled back, confused. "What hard part? We already got through the test." Carter smiled. "Now we have to figure out how to actually be together. Without the pressure, without the drama, just us." Victoria's laugh was watery but genuine. "I think we can manage that." 2 months later, Carter drove Victoria upstate. She didn't know where they were going. He had told her to pack for a weekend, dress casual, and trust him. They drove through spring countryside, trees budding green, fields coming alive after winter. After 2 hours, they turned onto a smaller road, then a dirt path. Finally, they stopped at a chain-link fence with a faded sign. "Summer Sky Camp, closed 2018. Victoria's breath caught. "Carter, this is, I know." He got out of the car and opened her door. "Come on." They walked through the abandoned camp. The cabins were still standing but weathered. The lake was overgrown with reeds. The fire pit was full of leaves. But the place still held echoes of what it had been. Children's laughter, campfire songs, summer adventures. Carter led Victoria into the woods. He followed a path he remembered from 15 years ago. His feet knew the way even though his mind had forgotten. They walked for 20 minutes before reaching the old oak tree. Massive, ancient, its roots spreading like veins through the earth. "This is where I found you." Victoria touched the tree trunk with trembling fingers. I remember this tree. I was sitting right here, crying, terrified, and then I heard footsteps. Carter nodded. I was looking for firewood, heard you crying and followed the sound. The dogs came a few minutes later, 5 of them, starving, desperate. I made myself big, yelled, waved my flashlight. They backed off eventually. You saved my life. You gave me hope. Carter turned to face her. And now I want to give you something. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Not a ring box, something different. He opened it. Inside was a bracelet, handmade, woven from dried lavender and thin leather cord. It looked fragile and precious and imperfect. I spent 3 weeks making this. Rosa's mother taught me how it over video calls. It's not much, it's not diamonds or gold, but it's made with my hands, and it's meant to replace the one you gave me 15 years ago, the one I lost. Victoria's hands shook as she took the bracelet. She held it like it was made of glass. Carter, this is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me. Carter took it from her and tied it carefully around her wrist. And I want to ask you something. Here, in the place where everything started. Victoria looked at him with eyes full of tears and hope and love. Carter knelt on the ground. The earth was soft beneath his knee. He looked up at her, this woman who had changed his entire life, and spoke the words he'd been carrying in his heart for months. Victoria Ashford, you are the strongest, kindest, most incredible person I've ever known. You make me want to be better. You make me believe in second chances. You make me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't have a diamond ring. I don't have a trust fund. I don't have anything except myself. But if you'll have me, I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. Will you marry me? Victoria dropped to her knees in front of him. Her hands cupped his face. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. They kissed under the oak tree where their story had begun. The forest around them was alive with bird song and rustling leaves and the sound of their hearts beating in sync. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was laughing and crying at the same time. I can't believe you brought me here. This is perfect. Carter stood up and helped her to her feet. I wanted to remind you where we started, so we never forget what matters. Victoria looked at the bracelet on her wrist, then at Carter, then back at the forest around them. What matters? You, me, Lily, the life we're building together. Not money or status or what anyone else thinks. Just us. Victoria kissed him again. Just us. They spent the rest of the day exploring the abandoned camp, finding memories, creating new ones. They sat by the lake as the sun set, painting the sky orange and gold. Victoria leaned against Carter's shoulder. When should we tell everyone? Carter thought about Gregory, Marcus, the press, the inevitable storm of attention that would come when people found out a billionaire heiress was marrying a former janitor. Soon, but not yet. Let's have this moment for ourselves first, before the world gets involved. Victoria agreed. They drove back to the city as stars filled the sky. The radio played soft music. Victoria held Carter's hand the entire way. When they reached her penthouse, she didn't want to let him go. Stay tonight, please. Carter smiled. I have to pick up Lily in the morning. Mrs. Chen is watching her. I know, but stay anyway, just for tonight. Let's pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist. So Carter stayed. They lay together in her bed, not sleeping, just talking. About their wedding, about their future, about how they would navigate the challenges ahead, about how they would protect Lily from the media attention, about how they would build a life that belonged to them and no one else. Around midnight, Victoria fell asleep. Carter lay awake, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. A year ago, he was scrubbing floors and drowning in debt. Now he was engaged to a woman he loved more than he thought possible. It felt unreal, like a story someone else was living. But it was real. The bracelet on Victoria's wrist proved it. The ring he would buy with his own money proved it. The way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching proved it. This was his life now. And for the first time since Sarah died, Carter let himself believe he deserved it. The next morning, Carter picked up Lily from Mrs. Chen's apartment. The little girl ran to him with a drawing in her hand. I made this for you. It was a picture of three people, one tall with dark hair, one medium-sized, one small, standing together under a tree. This is beautiful, baby. Who are they? Lily pointed to each figure. That's Victoria. That's you. That's me. We're a family now, right? Carter's throat tightened. He knelt down to Lily's level. Would you like that? If Victoria was part of our family? Lily nodded enthusiastically. She's so nice. And she makes you smile. You don't smile a lot anymore, Daddy. But when Victoria's around, you do. Carter hugged his daughter close. You're right, she does make me smile. And yes, she's going to be part of our family. Lily pulled back, her eyes wide. Really? Really? Lily threw her arms around his neck. This is the best day ever. That afternoon, Carter and Victoria sat Lily down together. They explained that they were getting married, that Victoria would be Lily's stepmother, that they would all live together as a family. Lily listened with serious attention. Then she asked the only question that mattered to a 7-year-old. Will I still have my own room? Victoria laughed. Yes, you'll have your own room. And I was thinking we could decorate it together. You can pick the colors and the furniture and everything. Lily's face lit up. Can I have a purple room? Absolutely. Victoria was crying again. Happy tears. Whatever you want. Lily looked at Carter. Daddy, is it okay if I call her Mom? Not right away, when I'm ready. Carter's vision blurred. He looked at Victoria, who was openly crying now. If Victoria's okay with that, then yes. Victoria couldn't speak. She just nodded and pulled Lily into a hug. They told Gregory a week later. He took the news with typical stoicism. Congratulations. Have you set a date? Not yet. Victoria's voice was careful, watching for his reaction. We want something small, just family and close friends. Gregory nodded. Your mother would have liked him, the first one, before she got sick. She always said the measure of a man wasn't what he owned, but what he was willing to sacrifice for the people he loved. Victoria's eyes filled. You never talk about her. Gregory's expression softened slightly. Because it hurts, even after all these years. But she'd be proud of you for following your heart instead of following expectations. They told Marcus next. His reaction was less enthusiastic but more civil than expected. I was wrong about you. Marcus's voice was flat. I thought you were using her, but I see now that you actually care. Carter extended his hand. I know we didn't get off on the right foot, but I'd like to try again, for Victoria's sake. Marcus looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then he shook it. Fine, but if you ever hurt her, blessing or no blessing, I'll destroy you. Fair enough. The wedding was planned for 6 months later, mall ceremony in Central Park. 50 guests, Lily as flower girl, Rosa from the kitchen helping with catering, James from security standing as one of Carter's groomsmen. No press, no media circus, just two people who loved each other, making a promise in front of the people who mattered. Carter used his savings to buy Victoria a simple engagement ring, white gold band with a small diamond. It cost him $3,000, which was more money than he'd ever spent on anything except rent and medical bills. When he gave it to her, she cried, It's perfect. It's not what you're used to. Victoria shook her head. It's exactly what I need because it's from you. Not from your credit card, not from some allowance. From you. And that makes it priceless. The months before the wedding passed in a blur. They moved into a house in Brooklyn. Nothing extravagant, just a 3-bedroom brownstone with a small backyard where Lily could play. Victoria insisted on paying the down payment, but the mortgage was in both their names. This is ours, not mine, not yours, ours. Carter kept working as Victoria's assistant. He was good at it, organized, efficient, trustworthy. Gregory offered him a position in the company, director of operations, better salary, more responsibility. But Carter turned it down. I don't want to succeed because I married your daughter. I want to succeed because I earned it. Give me 2 years. Let me prove I can do the job. Then we can talk about promotions. Gregory respected that more than he'd respected almost anything else Carter had done. Lily started at a new school in Brooklyn, better funded than her old one. She thrived, made friends, joined the art club, brought home drawings and paintings that Victoria framed and hung throughout their house. One night, Lily asked Carter about Sarah. Do you still miss Mommy? Every day. Carter's voice was gentle. But missing her doesn't mean I can't be happy now. It just means she was important to me. And she always will be. Lily thought about that. I think Mommy would like Victoria. Carter smiled through tears. I think she would too. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. September sunshine, cool breeze, leaves just starting to turn gold. Carter stood at the altar in a suit he'd bought himself. Not borrowed, not given. His, purchased with money he'd earned. James stood beside him, nervous in his own suit. Rosa sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Gregory sat stoic but present. Marcus looked uncomfortable but sincere. Mrs. Chen beamed from her seat, proud as any grandmother. And then the music started. Lily walked down the aisle first, scattering flower petals with serious concentration. She wore a white dress with purple ribbon at the waist. When she reached Carter, she whispered, "Don't cry, Daddy. You'll make me cry too." Then Victoria appeared. She wore a simple white dress, no train, no veil, just clean lines and elegant simplicity. Her hair was down. The lavender bracelet was on her wrist. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers, and she was the most beautiful thing Carter had ever seen. She walked down the aisle alone, no one giving her away, because she wasn't property to be transferred. She was a woman making a choice. When she reached the altar, she took Carter's hands. The officiant began speaking, but Carter barely heard the words. He was too focused on Victoria's face. On the way, she looked at him like he was everything she'd ever wanted. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Victoria spoke first. "Carter, you taught me that love isn't about what someone can give you. It's about who you become when you're with them. You make me braver. You make me kinder. You make me believe that I deserve to be happy. And I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you feel the same way." Carter's voice shook when he spoke. "Victoria, 15 years ago, I held your hand in the dark and promised you'd be okay. Today, I'm making that promise again. For the rest of our lives, through whatever comes, I will be there. I will hold your hand. I will make sure you're okay. Because loving you is the easiest and hardest and best thing I've ever done." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss." They kissed as their friends and family applauded. The sun broke through the trees, bathing them in golden light. When they pulled apart, Lily ran up and hugged them both. "We're a family. We're really a family." The reception was held in a small restaurant nearby. No ballroom, no orchestra, just good food, good wine, and people who genuinely cared about them. Gregory gave a speech that surprised everyone. When Victoria told me she was marrying Carter, I thought she was making a mistake. His voice carried across the quiet room. I thought he was using her, taking advantage, proving every stereotype about poor men and rich women. But I was wrong. He paused, looking at Carter. "Carter Morrison is one of the most honorable men I've ever met. He turned down money. He turned down power. He turned down everything except the chance to love my daughter honestly. And that's more valuable than anything I could ever give her." He raised his glass. "To Carter and Victoria, may your love continue to prove me wrong in all the best ways." Everyone drank. Carter stood up to respond. He wasn't good at public speaking. His hands shook as he held his glass. "I don't have fancy words or clever toasts. All I can say is that Victoria saved my life as much as I saved hers. She gave me hope when I had none. She gave my daughter a mother. She gave me a reason to believe that good things can happen to ordinary people. So thank you to everyone here who supported us, and especially to Victoria for choosing me every single day." They danced. Carter had taken lessons in secret, wanting to surprise Victoria. He wasn't graceful, but he didn't step on her feet. That counted as a victory. As they moved slowly across the floor, Victoria whispered, "This is everything I ever wanted." A small smile played at Carter's lips. A wedding in a park and dinner in a neighborhood restaurant? Victoria pulled back to look at him. No, a life with someone who loves me for who I am, not what I have. That's all I ever wanted. And I finally found it. The party lasted until midnight. Then Carter and Victoria went home to their brownstone in Brooklyn. Lily was sleeping over at Mrs. Chen's apartment. They had the house to themselves. They lay in bed together, exhausted and happy. Victoria traced patterns on Carter's chest. "Do you think we'll always be this happy?" Carter thought about it. Probably not. Life doesn't work that way. There will be hard days, days when we fight or struggle or question everything. But I think we'll be okay, because we chose each other. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. Victoria kissed his shoulder. That's all I needed to hear. They fell asleep wrapped around each other. The city hummed outside their window. Somewhere in the Bronx, another single parent was working a night shift, wondering if things would ever get better. Somewhere in Manhattan, another lonely heiress was staring at her empty penthouse, wondering if money could ever buy happiness. But in a brownstone in Brooklyn, two people who had found each other against impossible odds were building something that couldn't be bought or sold or taken away. They were building a family, a life, a future, and it was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. 1 year later, Victoria stood in Lily's purple bedroom watching the little girl sleep. She was 8 now, taller, more confident. She had Carter's stubborn streak and Sarah's artistic talent and Victoria's determination. She was loved beyond measure. Carter appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" Victoria nodded without turning around, just thinking about how much has changed. In a good way, in the best way. Victoria walked over to him. They stood together in the doorway, watching their daughter breathe. "I have something to tell you." Carter's heart jumped. "What?" Victoria took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We're going to have another one. A baby. Due in 6 months." Carter's eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. I found out yesterday. Wanted to wait until we were alone to tell you." Carter's vision blurred. He pulled Victoria into a fierce hug. I don't even have words." Victoria laughed against his chest. "I know. Me neither. But I'm terrified and excited and so happy I could burst." They stood there holding each other while their daughter slept and their future grew inside Victoria's body, and the city carried on around them, indifferent to their joy but unable to diminish it. Because some things were bigger than money. Some things were bigger than class or status or what anyone else thought. Love was one of those things, and family was another. And the life you built with your own hands, from the ground up, against all odds, was the biggest thing of all. Carter thought about the moment everything changed. The moment Victoria walked into that hallway and recognized him. The moment she kissed his cheek and promoted him and changed his entire world. He used to think it was luck, random chance, but now he understood it was something else. It was two people who had helped each other 15 years apart finding their way back together. It was the universe saying sometimes if you're patient enough and brave enough and willing to fight for what matters, good things do happen. Not because you deserve them, but because you were willing to believe they could. And that belief, that stubborn refusal to accept that the world was only cruel and cold and indifferent, that was what made all the difference. Carter kissed Victoria's forehead. "Thank you. For what? For choosing me, for believing in me, for making me believe in myself." Victoria smiled up at him. "You saved my life once. I'm just returning the favor." They went to bed and lay awake talking about baby names and nursery colors and how they would tell Lily she was going to be a big sister. They talked until the sun came up, painting their bedroom in soft gold light. And as the city woke up around them, as millions of people started another day of struggling and fighting and hoping for something better, two people who had found each other against impossible odds held each other close and knew with absolute certainty that they were exactly where they belonged.